Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Dr. Gene Dorio with my co-host, Barbara Cochran, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. We're talking now with Kim Wall.
Hi, guys.
Who is, always has interesting topics concerning our seniors and what they can do to bring better health to themselves.
Balance.
The balance.
Yeah.
That's a key word in how we can make it through life, isn't it, Kim?
Yep. Because life is a journey of many roads, many heartaches, many joys, many frustrations, and you don't want to get stuck in any of those places. And it's the blessings of the people around us that love us and support us, new friends and people we may meet in that journey sometimes that just come and go for a season. But it's looking at the wholeness of what life is and learning to listen to our body and being able to express, because one of the things I love about why I get into homeopathy is it's such an expressive medicine. Your body expresses something and you give your body what it needs to help it get through that. And that's the perfect healing. And we have it in all areas of our life. Emotional traumas, maybe things that happen to us physically that are out of our control, a car accident or a sudden, something in our life that we don't plan, that can really rock someone. And depending on what our support group is around us, sometimes we might fall into things that are patterns or think we're isolated and we're alone. And unfortunately, our Western path is one of pharmaceuticals. And we're not drug deficient. Sometimes people are fat deficient in the brain, and that's why they might get depressed, or magnesium deficient, and that's why their blood pressure's up, and maybe they're not sleeping. And there's many things in our life we can look at in basics that can fill those gaps. And that's the beauty of homeopathy, because it fills the wholeness. It gets that wholeness there and that balance there. And it can be something as simple as an upset stomach, or, something as serious as anxiety or nervousness or depression, where you might not feel comfortable taking something pharmaceutical or maybe not have that option. So,
well, it's interesting because it would have been nice to have you in here in the first half hour, because
well, you can invite me anytime to play with them.
We had Mike Doherty here, who's behavioral health at Henry Mayo, and we were talking about depression with seniors.
Well, it's interesting. The very first time I ever did flower therapy, Bach flower therapy, it's been around for 100 years or so. Dr. Bach was a homeopath back in the early, I think, 1900s. I'm not quite sure his lifespan. But I did Bach flowers for depression when I was in my 30s. And they changed my life. And it was one of those things that put me on my path, because I was a mom of 3 who was working full time, raising my children. Back then, we didn't do daycare.
No.
I worked nights. My husband worked days. We made the joke, I used to breastfeed my daughter in the parking lot on my 20-minute break. We did what we did, and my health got to me where I crashed, and I had that, and I was very depressed. It had to do with, I know now looking back, my hormones. It had to do with the foods I was eating. I was eating way too many carbs as an O and no protein. So I was always in a hypoglycemic, out of crazy balance. But I remember walking into that store, and I got a Bach flower questionnaire, and I filled it out. And I got the flowers, and I made myself a bottle of flowers. And it was amazing, the transformation and how I felt. And the beauty was taking those flowers as a tool, and I still to this day use them. It's been over 30 years. Using them for my kids for anxiety in school, using them for other people with thises or that's or traumas. When I had the wellness center, when I worked there, that was one of the specialties I offered the Valley, and I had lots of teachers and psychologists and therapists that would send people to me to have flower therapy made for them, because I could make it custom. And that's the beauty of flowers and homeopathy, is it's a custom to you. It's not, here's a bottle of X, Y, or Z. Some of them are real generic, like most people have heard of Rescue Remedy, and it comes in a little bottle, and it's a Bach formulation. And it has stuff for shock, trauma. I've used it for people having panic attacks. I've used it for an animal to prevent shock. That was one of my favorites. Well, the beauty of evolution and how we evolve and create more wonderful things. Dr. King's stress control has the Bach flowers in it for the stress emotionally, but then it also has homeopathics in there that is for the bleeding and the trauma and the swelling and anything that might be physically happening to the body. So that's one of the ones I carry with me all the time, because in a shock situation, what's the first thing? We want something to calm the body. But with the flower essences and a senior, you could use those so simply. And Dr. King makes a few. He makes one called Good Mood Enhancer. He makes one that's a senior mental alertness. He makes a guilt and grief, an anxiety, a stress, a burnout. And they're so simple, water-based, a couple sprays. They're homeopathic, no counterindication to pharmaceuticals. So if they're on an anti-anxiety or depression medicine, we can still treat them with the remedy because there's no counterindication. And it's something they can use every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, they can spray that.
Without overdosing.
Exactly. And it's telling the body, and that's what homeopathy does. It's energetic medicine. It's bioenergetic. It's not chemical. We don't digest or take anything. It's energetic. So it goes in and it tells the body, hey, knock it off.
Well, it brings the balance back.
Exactly. So if we do that every time we need it, and PSD, I mean, think of all the things you could use it for without having that. And it's beautiful to blend with other things. If somebody's doing GABA, let's say, because they're getting off of a drug withdrawal and they're using the GABA to calm the brain, we can use the flower essences to get in there and balance the addictive behavior or the anger or whatever it was they originally emotionally had, why they started to self-medicate. And the beauty of flower essences, you can use it at any age. You can use it with animals. I used to make formulations for a cat rescue out here. And I had a little card, and it had certain flowers I would use: cats that bit, cat that peed inappropriately, cats that did this or that. And so this woman could take these, rescue cats and actually rehab them and be able to find them homes because of those behaviors were addressed. And what were those behaviors? They're just a pissed off animal. If your animal's pissing on your thing, he's pissed at you.
That's right.
So, it's very interesting to look at that. And with the flower essences and addressing seniors, it'd be such a great correlation. And that's where my heart passion is I wish there was more. Let's invite Kim into the conversation. And what can a place like that do to incorporate it? I have a really good friend of mine who just moved to Tennessee, and she's working at a senior living facility. And they're already so excited about some of the homeopathics that King Bio offers because they're simple. It's enclosed, it's water-based, no worries, and it could be something that can improve that quality of life,
So when you say Bach flower therapy, how do you, there are listeners right now who are on the internet saying, okay.
B-A-C-H, Dr.
Like
Bach.
Tchaikovsky
yes,
and Mozart
Dr. Bach,
and Bach.
yes. He was the original, he was actually a homeopath originally, and he believed in studying homeopathy and seeing how powerful it was, that if you could control the mind, if you could get the mind balanced, all impulses come from the mind. All impulses to heal, all nerve pathways come from the brain. That's the master cylinder. So if we can get that in balance, and the physical body will follow. So he went out into the wild and watched how animals interacted and things interacted with what was in the nature back like we did back then. And he put together the original 38 Bach flowers. And those are at any store you go to. Any health food store would have them. There's different practitioners that do therapy. You can go online and look at it. FES is another company that does a little bit more of a spectrum. They've kind of taken it, again, evolution. They have flowers that are of our region. So one of the flowers that people would be very familiar with is the Bach flower. Is when you're driving down the 5 and you see all those big yellow, the yellow flowers, are the little ones, the mustard plants that are everywhere. Well, mustard is used to treat depression. How interesting is that? When we bring fresh cut, and that's how Bach flowers are made. They take a fresh flower, put it in water, and let it make like sun tea. But think when you bring flowers into the home, how good it feels, and whatever that energy might be. So the FES company has done flowers of our region. So the flowers around us that can help us. But I loved it. I used them with my children. I've used them with my animals. And the beauty is they're inexpensive. You get a little bottle. You put 4 drops in a glass of water, a bowl of water, 15, 20 drops in a bathtub. I mean, some in a diffuser. It can be done many ways.
Well, how do you get that guidance to figure out what you're going to use?
Well, believe it or not, there actually is online. There's a little questionnaire. And I used to give the questionnaire when I had the wellness center to my customers to fill out. And it's super simple. It's just a yes or no. What do I feel? You go, and it's right online. I believe at I think it's just BachFlowerEssences.com, but if they Google it, they can find it. But there is a questionnaire. If you Google Bach questionnaire and you fill it out, and it'll tell you what flowers to consider. And when you read, then you can read on that flower, like a flower like agrimony is an example. Agrimony is a flower that we would use for somebody if you were to ask them, so how you doing, doctor? And you'd say, oh, I'm fine. Everything's great. I'm wonderful. And you know they're not. They're putting on that fake face. They're putting on that thing. They're holding all their emotions inside. They're not being true to who they are. So in that, they might have acid reflux. They might have colitis. They might have arthritis or physical symptoms because they're holding that. So the flower essences can allow that. They take it, that shifts, and all of a sudden now they want to talk about it. And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Maybe now they're stuck in it and they're bitter and they're resentful. Then we could bring in some beech or some willow to help mellow that out and to let that bitterness go. And now we are who we are. And I will say, for me, it changed my life.
You know, it's interesting. I love roses. And when I go out, I love to have them in the house. Every rose bush I have, blooms are all in the house.
Every plant?
And you smell a rose, and they're all different. And, oh, what a delightful, it really transforms me.
And what you're looking at there is two therapy. Exactly. Two therapies. You're looking at aromatherapy, because you're inhaling that, and it's a memory, and it's that aromatherapy of that essence of the flower. And in the same sense, rose is definitely a flower essence you can take internally for the emotional support. And that's the beauty. The earth has given us everything we need. Unfortunately, we were sold out quite a while ago into a pharmaceutical mindset.
Called Big Pharma?
Exactly. And we think that if we chemically make it, that we know better. The problem is this. Our bodies have been, through evolution, however you want to look at it, we recognize natural substance. We recognize natural sugars and fats and oils. The chemicals we take in, our cells don't quite know what to do with. And so that's how we get into these disease patterns. So we want it simple. And if we could look at medicine from that point of view, it would be very powerful. Unfortunately, like I said, it's an individual thing, is how it has to be. If you're diagnosed with anything, you have to fight for yourself as an individual, because the standard of care is not going to want or look at you for your quality of life. They're looking to create a customer.
Let me go off on a tangent then. Because you mentioned this, you mentioned addictive behavior, and that, you know, I wasn't sure if that was in the context of the Bach flower.
You bet it is.
Okay, so,
yes.
And you know, the big thing, the CDC and all these people are coming out telling us doctors don't prescribe the narcotic medications because of addiction. What within Bach flower therapy could help with addiction and addiction patterns when you have somebody who is locked on now because of the pain medication? Now they're trying to withdraw, but they're stuck. And
and whatever that is in that craving, if you can give something with the I need something, then the body can learn I don't need it, because the will is there, but it's a pattern. It's just like anything. It's a pattern. You get up every day and you do X, Y, and Z.
Well, that's we heard just recently about Prince, who died of an overdose of opioids for pain. And it's so easy to do.
What's probably
he may
really
have been addicted
it
to it as well.
depends.
And if he was, and if you are, and I have known even physicians who have gotten addicted because they had hip surgery. They then take the medication and then realize they can't get off of it. But so my question goes back to the Bach.
Yes, in the Bach flower, yes, because what you're going to look at with that therapy is you're going to look at the whole person's needs. So this person may be addicted for this reason, this person in this. So the flower essences are going to look at that. One of the ones I would say would be a super simple one to consider is one by King Bio called Addictoplex. And it's for addictive behavior, so it has the homeopathics, one of them being Nux vomica for that addictive behavior. Then it has the flower essence therapy support on it. And what I used to do at the Wellness Center is I used to take that therapy to another level. I would take that Bach or that King Bio formula, whatever it might be, okay? And let's say Barbara came in and she said, you know what, Kim, I have anxiety, but I've got X, Y, and Z specific. I could take some Bach flowers and open up that King Bio and put a couple drops in. Now I've made myself a custom remedy for exactly what I'm going through in the moment. And I can shift it if I need to. You know what? And I'd have people come in and say, I'm depressed. Okay, well, you know, I could give you mustard, but why don't you fill out this thing? They filled out, they weren't depressed, they were pissed, they were angry, they were resentful. So I gave them flowers for those emotions, and the depression went away. Because it was how they were expressing it. They weren't depressed, they were mad and angry, but they weren't so it's about understanding, but the beauty is with the Bach Flowers, yes, and it's looking at the whole person. That's why it's not one. But with the King Bio formula, something like the Addictoplex or the smoking control for quitting smoking, because that again being addictive, but it could also be a food thing. It could be the appetite and weight because you're overeating because you're emotional. So the beauty with homeopathy is it doesn't matter. Each one of those would address the wholeness of that person and get them to get into balance. Then they would say, you know what, I'm feeling really good, but you know what, I've noticed this or this. So then I might bring a remedy in or a supplement in. And that's where you hope some of your local stores, like yesterday, I was actually in this valley. I was training at Whole Foods. I was training at Sprouts. And that's one of the things I do. I go all over Southern California and educate the people that people go into those stores to talk to. Mm-hmm. So when you go into those stores, you want to ask that and question it, because just because you see it on TV doesn't mean it's truth. And who funds what we see on TV? It's funded by pharmaceutical. So if we could try something that's water-based, super simple, that doesn't have a side effect, why the heck not? In fact, one of the funny stories I ever had with flowers is I had this mom used to bring her 3 boys in, and she says it was life-changing for her. And one day the dad saw the bottle sitting on the table, and it was a little blue bottle with a sticker on it. And he says, "What is that?" She says, "Well, it's flower essences. It's, our oldest son's flowers." "Well, what is it?" "Well, it's to help him calm down and do." "Well, what's in it?" "It's flowers. She puts water, she puts a couple drops of the flowers. It's nothing." So the dad took some.
It sounded like he needed it.
He sure did. And guess what? 20 minutes later, he comes back over and he says, "You really shouldn't give that to our child." She's like, "Why?" He goes, "Because I can really feel the difference. It's like mellowing me out." And the wife just laughed and like, okay, like you said. But why? Because in that example, it's perfect. The children are picking up the energy of those parents. So if those parents are angry and stressed and whatever, those children are, they don't know they're picking it up. So when I used to do flower therapy that way, I would treat both the children and the adult. So same thing with the senior. If you've got someone you're taking care of that's bitter and angry, and you're coming home with that energy and you're just feeling overwhelmed, taking something like the willow or the beech by the Bach flowers could get rid of that resentment.
But we have the antennae of the listeners right now, because we're talking about addiction, and we have a addiction problem here in Santa Clarita that, certainly if we could simply take care of it in a manner that
but it's
is
a whole
not costing $10,000 a month to go to some rehab center, maybe.
And take him from one drug to another drug. What is the point? No. I get it, because you have to make a transition, but the emotional is never addressed, and that's why there is relapse. Because we can take it away and we can give you coffee or something else to fill the addiction, but we've not got into why is your body doing that, and what can we do to put in that hole in you to make that wholeness happen, and find positive transitions. Because there are positive transitions as opposed to taking somebody from an opiate to another opiate that's synthetic. You bet.
That's right.
You bet. There's much. You bet. There's much more positive ways of making that transition. But again, that's where it's going to be people actually being, like you said, having that knowledge to say, "I don't want to take that. I want to see what else I have." And that's what I love about King Bio, because they do make a professional line for doctors as well. That's a little higher potency that goes into probably 50 mental categories. That if somebody really wanted to embrace it, that's what it is. It's out there. The doctors can make a difference if they want to. It's out there. But it's about owning it too, Hey, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to have these 3 things that I offer my clients because it can make an emotional difference for them. Let me know what happens. If nothing else, hey, send me 10 bottles of this stuff.
Well, you have to believe in what you're doing.
You have to believe in yourself.
That's right. And so many doctors believe that opioids are going to cure the problems.
And forget about that, they're creating problems too.
That's right.
That's exactly what happens.
And I think we need to take another break. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And we're speaking with Kim Wall, who's an alternative medicine advocate. And we've been talking about all kinds of solutions to many kinds of problems that don't evolve around opioids
or side effects.
And trying to find the balance that might be out of step in one's life, so that you can take the easier way of finding a solution. And we don't do that. We think that, we have to pay $50 for a prescription or $100 for a prescription to get that balance back, when in reality, it might not be that difficult and it might not be that expensive.
No. And the sad thing is this. In fact, I have a family member who had contacted me from Minnesota who is concerned that he might be developing some Alzheimer's symptoms. And so I said, well, before I talk to anybody, when I do my consultations, I want a list of if you're on any medications. And I looked up the 5 medications he was on: blood pressure, beta blocker, cholesterol, the list, the usual one. You start with one and they give you another and another. And every single one of them, side effect, had mental confusion, mental problems, memory loss. I mean, it was all about the brain too. And I was like, listen, I can tell you this, but if you're taking this and it's going to constantly damage that, what's the point? Yeah, you live an extra 5 years in your life without heart disease, but you can't remember who you are. What kind of quality of life is that? And it's sad that people will sell themselves out in those later years. That we shouldn't do that. As I look at it, body mechanic, if my car is telling me, hey, red light's on, check this out. If I put tape over that red light, I'm not fixing anything.
No, you're not.
And if I'm putting tape over it, now maybe this is out or that's out, and that's where the problem, it escalates. And now you're taking one drug for this, and this causes this and another drug. So you don't even remember. And as I said to him, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And he was a perfect example of blood type as well. Because I said to him, because this whole thing's about cholesterol and blood pressure, and I said, you sound like an O to me, because that's a big O thing. And he says, yeah. And I said, and if you are an O, one of the worst things you could eat is a little round cereal for breakfast that's supposed to make your heart better. And he says, well, I eat that every single morning. And I said, and you know what? I used to watch people come in when I would do consultations on them, and if I took that out of their diet, their cholesterol came down. Because cholesterol you got to understand the mechanics. Cholesterol's there to heal, protect the brain.
Well, absolutely.
Right. So we don't want to stop.
It is a part of body's necessity.
100%. It deals with hormones and everything. It is part of that longevity. But if we look at the bad cholesterol in the blood, what is that? That's the fats and things that we're not meant to digest. So that's what's floating around in there.
That's
so
right.
If we eliminate that out of our diet and eat the things that bring up the good, again, we're looking at that mechanics and the depression. And the same thing with the addicts. What is that going on? Is it emotional? Is it possibly nutritional? Because we know that it's funny that certain things, like children that start out eating dirt and certain things because they're lacking, but we don't listen to those things. So the beauty with homeopathy or Bach flower therapy is it looks at the whole person. And what I love about King Bio and why I'm so passionate about going around and spreading that information the way I do and lecturing and coming and talking to you guys is because it's so pure and it's so powerful and it can make a difference. What do you have to lose? You might be able to gain a quality of life or maintain the quality of life you have. iHeartRadio, which anybody can get on their computers or whatever. Dr. King's on iHeartRadio every Saturday at 11 o'clock our time. And boy, is it interesting to listen to some of the stuff he talks about. And he's so passionate about longevity and creating, like you said, what are the simple things I can do, to have whatever that is, good muscle mass. I want to be able to go out and ride my bike and do for my whole life. And what takes, that into account is the proteins and things, as well as the wholeness of what makes, as he talks about, the 8 essentials of well-being.
And we've talked about a lot of subjects, but certainly I'd like to get back to that addiction when you come on again, because I think this community needs that discussion.
And I would love to have some people that would be interested in trying some of the stuff.
And just giving us feedback on it.
Exactly, that's all.
We're looking at evidence-based studies that are put out by Big Pharma, and the rest of us don't have anything.
And Dr. King is so passionate about what he does. I'll guarantee you he'll send you a box to whoever wants to try that, and they will give them that to try just for that feedback.
Because that's
how passionate he is about what his stuff can do and why he is doing what he's doing. The healing revolution, to go out and wake people up and own the quality of your life. As he says, he's 60-something and he plans to be 120 with quality.
So if our listeners want to get a hold of you,
if they want to call me up and try a remedy, they can email me at educator@kingbio.com, and I can have something sent to them or whatever. Or they can reach me on my cell phone, which is 818-683-4876.
683-4876.
That's right.
That's 818-683-4876.
And like I said, I've done a couple lectures in the community and other areas, so if there's anything I can do to support somebody, or like I said, even
Or
a
bring-
senior group, I can bring my Bach Flowers into the group and we can have a Bach Flower party. Just invite me over
And I'll bring
we'll hook you up.
my Tchaikovsky recordings.
Perfect.
And we'll just have a great time.
It'll be
Yes,
perfect.
we will.
And Barb will bring the roses.
There you
Great.
go.
It'll be a trifecta.
Great, Kim. Thanks for being on the show
My pleasure,
today.
guys.
We are sponsored by Advanced Audiology and SCV Home Care. Listen to us next week on the Senior Hour. Now go and enhance your quality of life.